Good afternoon, book lovers of the internet. Welcome back to my channel. I am Book Nerd 802, and in this video, I am going to be reviewing this manga volume called Venus in the Blind Spot by Junji Ito. It's been a while since I last made a book review, so here you go. This is perhaps the one and only manga volume I have, which is both in hardback and came with a dust jacket as well. It consists of about 270 pages, and I rated it a 3 out of 5 stars. I picked this up thinking that it would be a fully fledged story rather than a short story collection, but I suppose I was not disappointed. I was definitely mistaken about that. I wasn't disappointed regardless, since even though I finished reading this one 2 days ago, some of the stories I still remember and now consider to be rather memorable, especially considering how, um, in terms of long term memory, I've been suffering recently, and short term memory as well. I might have received a lobotomy against my will at some point, and I have no knowledge of that either. So I just wanted to read something quick in order to be able to write a book review and make a video respectively, since, as I mentioned, I hadn't in a while. I haven't uploaded a video in a while, and the story which was chosen as the title for this anthology, we have Venus in the Blind Spot. I did not enjoy very much. I will still go through what it is about very briefly. But yeah, I did not enjoy it much, and I still think that some of the other stories were quite brilliant, and I was also already familiar with the one where people walked into holes, which of course had to have matching silhouettes of their bodies. They basically kept walking through the holes which their bodies fit in perfectly. Then the holes started to shift shape, and over time, over long distances, their bodies had no choice but to shift as well. And by the time they made it to the exit, their bodies were completely um, altered into creatures basically, which resembled the original no more, and it's rather frightening, honestly, as a concept, although perhaps quite unrealistic. Um, my copy of this uh, gr- graphic novel manga volume, which I found on Facebook Marketplace for a relatively very good price, by the way, has several pages which are in full color, and towards the start, there are even many images of full colored pages from different manga volumes. I'll show you just a few. They are absolutely lovely, by the way. We have Frankenstein, I think, and Uzumaki, and a couple of others as well. I've come to realize that a lot of Ito's characters resemble Tomie, as I think she is one of his most beloved characters, and he uses her as a bit of a model basically for several other characters, especially the main characters, the female main characters. We also have this poster sort of image. I just want to show you as much of this as I can because the colored images are absolutely delightful to look at. I do love the shades that are used, and yeah, the shading itself is fantastic. That's enough about the artwork, however, we'll resume to speak about the stories themselves. So I have said this before and I'll say it again, but Ito is the sort of person who is definitely a better artist than he is an author. Even though his stories are brilliant in several ways, I do think that they tend to be rather repetitive, and the theme is generally always very similar, not much originality. After a couple of short stories, you kind of get used to it. And the fact that there are stories which have a lot of potential, which are cut short most of the time, still remains with every short story collection I've read by him so far. That is the sort of feedback I've given. And yeah, the memorable ones in this collection are the one in which bodies are stitched together when several people gather. Although it's memorable, that one did not make much sense. There is this person, probably with some supernatural powers, who was able to kill thousands of people, stitch them together, and create horrors beyond anybody's imagination, really. Then there is also the one with the human chair, where people just decided to live within an armchair for sexual reasons, rather disgusting and horrible. And there is also one with a sentient tongue, by the way, which inhabits a person's mouth, and that person is forced to lick others, and those people die. They are poisoned, and then the tongue basically just moves from one body to the next in a very parasitic sort of way. The main story, by the way, Venus in the Blind Spot, has to do with a very pretty woman, apparently. Personally, I do not think so. Um, but her father is a very studious guy. He researches UFOs, he's also a doctor, and he found a way in which to implant chips inside a human's brain so that his daughter would not be visible to them, so that the daughter would not have anybody chasing her, and she'd be safe. This worked completely against his intentions because his daughter was found ultimately anyway, and she was killed in a horrible, frightening way. That was probably the worst of it. Um, but yeah, the other stories, not that they are not memorable or that they are not interesting, it's just that they're quite repetitive. Some of them I've seen already, others did not really catch my eye in any way. Um, there is one, for instance, which I was also familiar with, the one where there is this father who um, found the pillar which was supporting the home right on top of his body, basically, and he couldn't move, he couldn't do anything about it because otherwise the house would fall. And we'll never find out how he ended up in such a situation. Very unrealistic at the same time, and doesn't make much sense, but that is, I suppose, what makes these stories so compelling. For some, perhaps what creates suspense and intrigue, but at the same time, I want to know what is going on because otherwise, what is the point of reading so many stories without any conclusions? And there's no point in really drawing my own conclusions either because you don't really get to know the characters enough to empathize or to care for any of them. So what, they died. I mean, they had no emotional connection with me anyway. So Ito is actually a character in one of the stories, making this collection a tad autobiographical as well. I don't recall coming across any stories where he was one of the characters and referred to by his name within the manga volume itself. He explains basically how from a young age he had quite a warped mind and enjoyed body horror, and his inspiration, one of his several idols, is this guy called Kazuo Umes, who is also this mangaka and a person whose manga is adapted into movies as well. So I did not know that Ito is tasked by so many authors and publishers to adapt stories into manga, and that the ideas are not always his own. That is obviously not to say that he steals ideas or that he is not a creative person, but yeah, he does give credit where it is due, and he does an excellent job. But as I mentioned, at some point the stories just start to blend into each other because anyone will get bored of seeing corpses be used for different reasons and purposes, or humans morphing into creatures against their intentions. How often am I going to see that before um, I stop getting frightened? I mean, once, twice, three times, I suppose, and then you just get used to it. You are desensitized, and the magic of it all is gone. But yeah, I think that is all I had to say about Venus in the Blind Spot by Junji Ito. The artwork is incredible. The stories, perhaps not as much, even though there are so many of them. Um, for instance, An Unearthly Love is a story about this guy who falls in love with a doll. The human woman he loves gets jealous and destroys the doll, and then he decides to kill himself out of nowhere. Um, quite an quite it's not a logical thing to do. Quite an illogical thing to do. Then there is also um, how love came to Professor Kirida, where a guy rejects a woman and then she kills herself and she haunts him until he suffers quite a lot as well. Then there is also Keepsake, which is perhaps slightly memorable since it's about a dead woman who gives birth to a child who is also rather creepy. Um, but yeah, those are basically very short summaries of all the stories in this collection. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, take a look at the rest of my content because why not? It's absolutely amazing. And I will see you in the next one, hopefully very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching and bye, guys.